And it was just a misjudgment. And my sense is that if you look at the rhetoric, well, maybe we ought to keep a modest force in Saudi Arabia for an extended period of time. The trouble is that keeps the thorn of America's presence there, and yet may also jeopardize those that are there because there might not be enough to defend oneself. And then, extraordinarily enough, the question can be asked, and there are no certain answers, but it's worthy to reflect upon. Is it always the case that fighting, quote, over there, or having a military presence over there, protects against attacks here at home? And I think there are cases to be made that that's the circumstance. There are also cases to be made that it might be the reverse of the right circumstance. And it appears that in retrospect that there was a case that was fairly compelling to intervene in Afghanistan. And if anything, criticism can be leveled that we didn't intervene with enough. And then a case that also may exist that we shouldn't have invaded Iraq. But I can't tell you that it's an ironclad case, but it's one that I find quite compelling. And so we were too stiff in one country, not stiff enough in another. And we're in a very perplexing position today, now in both.
Do you think that people's frustration with the two-party system will lead to the rise of a third party in the near future?
This could be the $64 question, as the old term used to be, of this election. There is quite a possibility that a significant third-party movement will develop this year. And I say possibility because nobody knows. But let me give you a little recent history that people have forgotten, that if there wasn't a third party in the 2000 election, Al Gore would have been elected president. That is, Ralph Nader was on the ticket in Florida, and he got a few thousand votes. And he had that's de minimis. But if he wasn't on the ticket, the probability is Gore would have carried Florida and therefore won the election. The last significant third-party candidate was from Texas, and this is Ross Perot in 1992. And Ross Perot, if you can visualize him, was not a particularly compelling-looking figure, and he made a number of misjudgments during the campaign. And I just ask you to think about if Ross Perot looked and acted like John Fitzgerald Kennedy. He got 19% of the vote. Do you not think it quite possible he could have well been in the 30s? I think there's a yearning in America for something that doesn't seem quite as partisan. And it could be very significant. Now, there are two ways it could work out in this election. One is there's a mayor of New York that's hinted some interest, but he's keeping awfully mum at the moment, which is, I think, wise politics and wise judgment. But he's hinted that if he does announce, and this is Mayor Bloomberg, he might commit 5% of his resources. Ross Perot put in about $33 million, it's thought. 5% of Mayor Bloomberg's resources could be $1 billion. He's considered to be worth somewhere around 20. That could be very significant. The other interesting phenomenon is that there is a process approach underway. And maybe some of you have read about something called Unity 08. And this is a group that was put together about a year ago by two former insiders in American politics. One named Hamilton Jordan, who was Jimmy Carter's, one of his top advisors. Another was a top Ford advisor. named Doug Bailey, much lesser known. But they thought it'd be interesting process-wise to try to have an internet convention. And so quite possibly at the end of May or so, you might have an internet convention in which all Americans will be invited to vote. And the theory of the internet convention is that if you got 10 million people to cast a ballot in it, that would be many more than would have voted to produce the Republican and Democratic candidates. And the theory is that let's pretend anyone, you could vote for anyone. Probably no one would get 50% in the first round, and so you'd have a second or third round, eliminating after the first round the top two, or leaving everybody but the top two, or maybe the third round if you go to the top 4 or 5. And the rule is that if a Democratic individual that is a member of the Democratic Party were to get the nomination, that person would have to choose a member of the Republican Party as a running mate, or vice versa. And that could be a very charming ticket, and one could visualize it being very attractive. For example, if you had Colin Powell and Sam Nunn in that ticket, a lot of Americans would look pretty close. You might have a Bill Bradley, you might have an Al Gore, you might have a Chuck Hagel, you might have a Mayor Bloomberg. There are lots of possibilities, and how that works out, nobody knows. Now, one of the trickinesses of it is what rules will be established for it. And so, for example, one rule may be that someone has to agree ahead of time that if nominated, they'll accept the ticket. And the reason that is a very tricky circumstance is you might say someone like Al Gore might be delighted at being nominated, but might turn it down. And that would be very embarrassing to the third party movement. So you might have to have pre-voting commitments of someone that might run, and so they might have to look through a large list of candidates before they decide how they're going to proceed. And frankly, they're talking to candidates today. And so that could well occur, and that might be a real surprise in the American political system. But it's up to the parties. If the parties have consensus candidates, I'm confident they're in the dominant position. If they don't, anything could happen.
Could you comment a bit on our relations with, say, China and India in particular, in terms of balance of trade and the other? That we're struggling with that in here in many ways, and some of the students are writing projects having to do with that kind of thing. I'll give you the most general field to run any way you would like to.
Well, it's an extraordinary world environment. The deficit we're running in trade with China is problemsome. One of the great questions would be, if you cut off trade, would that be more problemsome? And it's difficult. And then there are certain winners and losers in all this. Certainly, agricultural trade, it's a plus for the United States, and so it's a plus for Iowa. Certainly, some manufacturing, it's a disadvantage. For the American consumer, it's quite a plus. For the American jobs market, economists might think it's a plus, but for many Americans, it's a minus. And so it's how you look at this in the abstract. It's certainly impressive that we still have real economic growth. It's impressive that we don't have more than the 4.6% or so unemployment that we currently have. By the same token, America is becoming less and less of a making society, and we're becoming more and more of a service economy, and then that raises real questions for people's futures.